Hi everyone, today I'm super excited because we're going to be covering a bunch of riffs from one of my favorite metal bands. This is one of the bands that got me into playing guitar in the first place. I grew up on these guys. So if you like this kind of content, and there's going to be a lot more of it coming your way, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of it. So riff 1 comes from Ride the Lightning. I chose this riff to kick things off because it's super simple. Let's break it down, not a lot going on. So we're just going to think of this as eighth notes, a measure of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we're going to hit our power chord on the 6th fret, B flat, on the 1 and the end of 2. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we want to approach that from a half step slide. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now if you're a beginner, probably the trickiest part of this is going to be bouncing the palm mute. You just want to take the palm mute off for every time you stab a power chord. So off, on, off. Okay, and play that for the right amount of times. I shortened it up in the example that I played just so that it didn't go on too long. They play it a lot more on the actual recording. And then to get out of that riff into the main part of the song, we go down to this F sharp power chord on the 2nd fret. Okay, and we play this 4 times. So what that is F sharp on the 2nd fret to an E, open E power chord, back to the F sharp, to an open A. And you want to palm mute that F sharp when you come back to it the 2nd time. And now there's a couple of deadened 16th notes in here, like that. Once you get it up to speed, that it actually feels quite natural to mute those strings. Okay, and you play that 4 times, and then just hit end things on your power chord on the 2nd fret. And then you can get into the verse by just doing a little walk down, and you're into it. So that's just 8, 7, slide back up into 6. Little chromatic thing. Let's move on to riff 2. Riff 2 is Enter Sandman. Now this is a little bit tougher than Ride the Lightning was, but still quite an easy riff, so it's a good second step after that one. So the toughest thing about this one is the syncopation, feeling those offbeats accurately. We're starting this riff on the end of 4, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3. Okay, so what are we doing there? We're hitting our open E power chord, and you hit it again. And then with your 3rd finger, slide up to the 7th fret on the A string. Do a little walk down on the E string, 6, 5. And then palm mute the E and repeat it. And do that 3 times. And then we go to the 3rd fret power chord, to the 2nd fret power chord. Okay, so it's the 3rd fret power chord, and then 2nd fret, 3rd fret, back to the 2nd fret, and end it on the open E. Riff 3 comes from Harvester of Sorrow. This is a single note riff, so a little more complicated yet again than the first two riffs, but not too bad. We'll go slow. I skipped out all of the clean guitar at the very beginning and just got right to the part where the distortion comes in. But if you get this, then it's really just the same thing played with a clean tone. So here it goes. Okay, there's the first half. So we're gonna palm mute the open E and then the second fret on the A, so really just our open E power chord, but we're arpeggiating that. And then the third fret on the D string and the second fret. Then we repeat our two E power chord notes and then hit our fifth fret. And I've seen some tabs notate this as the open G. They're doing that, but I've seen enough live footage to know that they're using their pinky out there on the fifth fret to get that G. So 3, 2 again. And then, so same thing as the first little bit, but we go, instead of going to the second fret, we just hit the open D. Okay, so that whole little bit now. And then we hit a G and open A and D. F and an open D again. So you just have to make sure you palm mute the G and the F. Gets that little bouncy feel. And then you just play that 4 times. Okay, so that's 3 complete repetitions of that. On the 4th time, you only play 1.5 bars. So you only play this. And then we kick into the next riff, and I added this next riff in here too, so it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal for you just because I think it's such a cool riff. But to get into that riff, heavy palm mute, really dig in. That will really make this riff pop out and sound good. But we start on the 3rd fret. Okay, so it's the 3rd fret to the 2nd fret. So G to F sharp. Palm mute the open E, and then skip up to the B to B flat, 2nd fret to 1st fret. And then open A. And then repeat that G to F sharp. So it's 16th notes, 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. And if you really dig in, like I said, it'll really make that pop. And now that basically covers the next bit of the riff too. So that heavy riff that the song starts with, after you do that, so you start with that little horse gallop. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and a. So the thing there is just to get the palm muting on and off properly to really make those slides pop out. Okay. Yeah, and then go to the, instead of hitting this E every time, you hit this F. And that's all there is to it, just back and forth between those. Going way back for this one, all the way to their first album, the Four Horsemen. Now I chose this riff for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's got a shuffle feel to it, which could be new for you. And second of all, it's got some triplet picking, which we'll talk about in a minute. So due to the speed of it, it's probably the most complicated one so far. It might take you a little bit of work to get this up to speed. They play it at 200 beats per minute or even a little bit more on the album. So simple enough riff though, is just the speed thing that you really have to work on. It starts with 4 power chord stabs. So it's the 3rd fret on the A string, a C power chord, down to G, up to the 5th fret, D, back to C, the starting one. And then we get into that riff. So that riff is, we're just holding the 5th and the 7th frets down on the A string and keeping the E underneath it. So we're kind of ringing those together, bouncing back and forth between those notes. Okay, and you got to get that shuffle feel in. There's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay, and that's all there is to that. Okay, and now on the 2nd measure, beat 4, you hit the 7th fret on the E, the low E string. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay, and now the 4th measure. There's a little something different in there again. We've got 3 measures of just straight going. And that on the 4th measure, we've got those a measure of pull-offs there, and that's just this. So we hit the 7th fret on the low E string, up to the 5th fret on the A string, do a little pull-off from 7 to 5, pull off 7 to 5 on the D string, back to the A string. And then to finish the riff off, we just go back to our... Okay, it's a bit of a strange riff that it's only 7 measures. It's not the expected 8 like most songs would have. So the second half of that riff is only 3 measures. And then back to the power chords. Again, I included 2 riffs here, 2 riffs for the price of 1, but this is where the picking hand is going to do a lot of the work, and this is what we have to talk about when it comes to triplets. So... okay, that riff. Now we want to chug triplets on that E string. And so with triplets, you have to go down, up, down. That makes a triplet, right? 1 triplet, which means that we have an option what we could do for that next beat. Are we going to do an up to keep down, up going, or are we going to do a down? Well, in this instance, I would recommend doing another down on beat 2. So it would be down, up, down, down, 1 triplet, 2. You could go down, up. Feels a little not quite as solid though, but I know that it takes a little while to work on that down, up, down, down for that to really feel natural. Okay, the other thing you have to worry about too, or watch out for when you're doing the down, up, down, down triplet picking, is that it doesn't start sounding like 16th notes. You don't want to have that, reverse horse gallop thing going on, like. Right? You don't want to have that. It has to be all even, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Right? So just watch out for that. Now, the whole riff is this. With just E's, and an E on the 7th fret. And then down to the 5th fret. 3rd fret, up to the 5th fret. 10th fret, back to the 7th fret, and then just those 4 power chords that we started everything with. So guys, we're about half done the riffs. In the comments below, I'm super curious to know if you've got a favorite Metallica track. Is there one that you want me to cover in full? Let me know. Blackened, one of my very favorite Metallica songs. So this was my very first song I think I ever heard of Metallica. This was my introduction to them. Back when I was just a kid, I'd ride the school bus to school, and there was a girl that rode with me, and she was about 4 years older than me. And she'd give me tapes to listen to, and one of the tapes, the cassettes that she gave me was Justice, and that was my first introduction to Metallica, and it was just the heaviest song on the album. I just loved it. I wore the tape out listening to that track over and over, so I had to include it here. Much more difficult than the other riffs that we've covered so far, though. Just again, due to the speed, a lot of down picking. James Hetfield is known for his down picking, right? Crazy right hand. Another thing that makes it difficult is the odd time signature. The intro riff is in 7/4, and then going into the verse, we're switching to 6/4. So we'll talk about that too as we get there. But let's get into this riff and make some noise. So we start off again, palm muting the E. Metallica is pretty infamous for that. We're going to palm mute that E. Okay, and so we're going to the 7th fret. We're just bouncing back and forth. And then that's a 7, 8, 7. And then we hit the 8th fret up on the D string. And so now that this is in 7/4, a lot of songs, the tabs, if you're going to look at tabs and stuff, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. It is 7/4, you could count it that way, but a lot of time compound signatures are felt as a combination of two different time signatures. And in this instance, it has a feel of 4 plus 3, which adds up to 7, so there's nothing wrong with thinking in 7, but really it's got that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and then the next measure, and then that makes 4 measures, just kind of, you know, changing 4, 3, 4, 3. So you could think of it that way. To me, that helps get the right feel of the riff when I think of it in those terms rather than 7. If I'm sitting there trying to count 7, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and it's a little bit more awkward and it doesn't quite have the same feel to it. But if you're putting that stress on the 4 and the 3, it seems to add up and feel a bit better. So let's get into the second half of that riff. We covered the first 7 beats. Now the second half of that riff starts out the same. So there's our first 4 beats again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, now what we're doing is going down to a B flat power chord. And what's really key to get that riff to sound right is to do a slide. Now after that we hit our 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, a double pick on the 3rd fret, and then down to the F on the 1st fret. And there it is. Now you play that 4 times, and then, well, 3 complete rotations. And the 4th rotation, you go. So that's the 3rd fret, G. So, and then an open E, and then 2 strikes on the 2nd fret. And you just repeat that. And then the album, you start that again. But let's quickly just jump into the riff. That next riff is so heavy. That's probably just the ultimate riff on that album. It's so good. Okay, sped up. Now again, we're changing time signatures here into 6/4, and it kind of feels to me like a 3 plus 3, and if you think of it that way too, it might help you with this riff. Instead of thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1, you'll think 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Okay? Experiment and see what feels good, but that feels good for me thinking like that. And the thing with that riff is, again, palm muting. Make sure you get the palm mutes right. So this is what we're doing. Just 1 and 2 and 3 and all on E. And then we want to hit the B flat, first fret on the A string. And then we're going to palm mute the second and the third frets on the low string. And now we take our palm mute off for these next 3 notes. 2, 1, 3. Another riff off of their very first album. This one is really good for understanding 16th notes, getting that pick hand to do alternate picking. If you get this one up to speed, then it's a very good picking exercise just by itself. So not a lot going on here. It's all in the pick hand once again. We're going to start with a couple of power chords starting on the 5th fret. Just chromatically up to the 7th, just 5, 6, 7. And then that's where we start our alternate picking. Okay, so it's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and just palm mute it all too. Okay, so down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and up, and then we slide down to the 3rd fret and do the exact same rhythm. And then we slide up to the 5th fret and do the exact same rhythm. And then we slide to the 2nd fret and do the same rhythm, but there's a little trick at the end. Okay, so it's 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and a 1. So it's just a random slide, but you have to make sure you're picking in time to land back on the 7th fret on beat 1. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and a 1. 4 E and a 1, 4 E and a 1, okay? Now we repeat the same notes with the 7th, 3, 5, and 2, but we're gonna have a slightly different rhythm the second time around. 1 and a 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Okay, so there's a little bit more going on there, a little more demanding on the picking hand yet again. Down to the 3rd fret, repeat that rhythm. Okay. Then back up to the 5th fret, slightly different rhythm again. 1 and a 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and 1 and a 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and. Okay, and then you can repeat all of that again and then get into the next riff. That one, okay, so let's talk about that one. So we start on the 7th fret, and then we go 7 to, or 5 to 7, then 5 to 3, then 2 to 3, then 2 to 5, then 3 to 5, then 3 to 2, open to 2, and then repeat. And if you really dig in again, palm mute heavy, it's going to sound cool. Master of Puppets. Would any lesson on Metallica ever be complete without it? The down picking extravaganza itself. Now, I've noticed there's a lot of misinformation on this riff, so I was looking around. I managed to dig up an article in Guitar World magazine. It came from about the year 2006, but Kirk Hammett demonstrated these riffs himself. So I'm going to take that as the Bible on this, because some of it can be pretty hard to hear on the album, even if you slow the track down. The drums are pretty loud on some of the key hits. So I can see where the misinformation comes from, but this sounds pretty darn perfect to me. So what we do to play this riff is power chord stab. And then that's the E power chord. And then we go, so just 10, 9, 8 along the low E string. And now all of this is just palm muting along the low E string. So it's a chromatic movement all the way down. And then you just take your palm mute off for every fretted note. Palm mute all the open E's and take it off for every fretted note. And the only exception to that taking the palm mute off and on is those last two notes. You're going to keep the palm mute on for that 2 and 1. Okay, and then you just repeat that. And now getting into the next riff, I shortened things up a little bit. Didn't play it exactly the right repetitions according to the album, but it's all there. If you can play this riff, then just splice it up and play along to the album. You've got it, no problem. So what we do, it's pretty easy to understand. Might be a bit difficult to get it up to speed, but what we're gonna do is, so we go open along the E string, open 1, to the 2nd fret on the A string. And then we just keep repeating that open 1 and doing a chromatic movement along the A string. Back to the 3rd fret. So open 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 2. Okay, so at the end there, on that second time around, and then hit that B power chord on the 2nd fret of the A string. And then we repeat that first half. Now on the very last measure, and that's just sliding from 3 to 2. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then to get into the main part of that song, you can double that up. I think that's it. There's nothing else to really talk about. So there we have, let's call it 7 riffs, maybe 8, 9, 10, I don't know. But there you got it, from beginner to somewhat advanced. But the important thing is even beginners can understand these riffs. So even if you're a beginner and you think that Master of Puppets is too hard for you, start working on it. Just practice slow to a metronome, you'll get it. And join me next week.